Hi, and welcome to the Metamorphosis Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Elliott. In the show, we get to explore anything and everything self realization and personal transformation in my favorite way possible, in connection with each other, having guests on where we get to dive into conversation and hearing other people's journeys and really getting to learn from the wisdom of actually just living life. Um, so, today, I'm free. Today, I'm really excited to have a really special guest. She's really good looking, and I really love connecting with her
Mm,
on the daily. It's my beloved
mm,
Courtney.
mm.
Welcome to the show, Courtney.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm happy to be here. It feels different having you interview me versus us doing a podcast together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you notice that's different?
I'm excited to see what you're going to ask me.
Yeah, so today I want to explore this topic of the feminine preparing to be in relationship with the masculine. This could be for those of you who are listening who are already in partnership. I'm sure there will be lots of pieces in here. And I want to have a focus a little bit of, you know, the reason I wanted to have Courtney on the show is when we first met, there was a lot of her sharing her preparation to call in her divine masculine qualities and her exploration and reflections from past partnerships of like the pieces that didn't work and what were the pieces that did work. And so I really want to just hear your journey of it. So other women tuning in, because the story I hear a lot with the women that I work with is, there's just not enough men out there. And there's this theme of almost anger and frustration and resentment towards men.
Mm-hmm.
And from my lens, that really impacts even the capacity to attract a divine masculine
Mm-hmm.
when there's that harbored anger and resentment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the frequency that's being put out is like a divine masculine wouldn't want to relate with that. Like
Uh-huh.
there in what I know inside of myself is like I wouldn't have wanted to be in partnership with a feminine that's like, fuck you. Like men suck.
Yeah.
Like that's not something I would attract. And so I'm curious of like what your journey's been.
Uh-huh.
If you want to touch on some of your past relationships, like what took you, like what's your journey been to arrive into a place where you got so clear on who you wanted to be in partnership with, who you wanted to co-create with, and like how did you make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I felt inspired when you invited me to come on because I too encounter this and in couples work and in processing with women, just this frustration of where is the masculine who's doing the work and feeling stuck in that process and then realizing um, that the journey I went on has a lot of value. Like it's
Mm,
um, to share, and to help people attune to because I think the feminine, I feel you sisters because you are have and are relating with unconscious masculine, experiencing hurt, feeling frustrated that you're the one showing up and the other person isn't. Like that is happening too, right? And
mhm,
so, but I think the part that I want to speak to here today, with you here, Mike, is what we can do because I think as the feminine you can go into a story, there's nothing I can do, like they have to shift, it's the, I'm doing everything I can, there's this, or this is just how it is, this is how men are. And what I want to invite you to get curious about what can you do, what do you have access to. And when I think of my first marriage, um and this is, I think, where the beginnings of what allowed me to attune myself and eventually end up in this relationship was, first of all, the willingness in me to feel what I wasn't satisfied with or what I was longing for in relationship, but instead of demanding it from that partner. And believe me, I had moments where I did that. The shift though was when I started to get curious, what's happening in me? What's the patterning in me in relation to the masculine and in relation to relationship that's manifesting this particular partnership? And I remember a really key moment for me that then I carried through on the journey was when I stopped being so attached to it's this partner, and I started to do more of the inner work of what am I embodying? What's my inner masculine and who is he? And how am I showing up? And then just embodying that and being clear what I was calling in, and then noticing what happened in that particular partnership. And, in that particular partnership, what ended up happening is that it became clear we weren't meant to journey together. But instead of it being from a place of criticism or anger or hatred or whatever that could look like, it was more from a realization of, oh, we're on different paths. And I feel like that was a huge initiation for me because I was in a healthy relationship, but I felt the inner longing and the inner calling for something more aligned, and I could feel the contours of what that would be. And I remember this courageous act of honoring that longing and that desire in me. And it's interesting because I really feel like it was that ability to keep moving towards what I was longing for and not projecting it onto the other person, but just continually owning that longing and continually learning about that and then becoming the person that I need to become to be the counterpoint for that, to create that, to become that person and going on that journey regardless of what I was in the moment. And it's just like
Mhm.
that deep inner voyage that you have. And this is the thing, is it doesn't even matter if maybe you are in relationship with the divine masculine, but if you're not able to create that relationship together, it's so much the inner work. It's so much like, what's the journey you go on inside of yourself to become that, to become the counterpoint, to become someone that can actually show up, and also someone that can love those qualities in the other, to become, strong in yourself. And one of the really key ones for me was learning how to build relationship with my own inner masculine. That was huge. And I remember when I started to turn towards my inner masculine, discovering, wow, he is weak, he's scared, he is completely shut down and angry. And my inner feminine was really angry at him. Like, you're collapsed, you're not showing up, you're not. And so all these, feelings that I had had towards the masculine really were about this also inner dynamic within myself. And one of the most powerful parts of my journey was when I did a lot of work of repairing the connection between the two inside of myself. So helping the masculine come into more of a sense of being in service to the feminine. That was huge. Like, and it was a lot of relational repair of like the masculine sort of orienting and learning how to listen to the inner feminine in me, and then the inner feminine learning how to have compassion for the inner masculine, and but then also calling him out when it's like, hey, you're taking over, or, hey, you're not listening. And then the inner masculine being like, oh, yep, I did that again. Okay, oh, I'm listening. Okay. And it was this learning for how they can work together. And I realized, like, if I hadn't done that inner work, I would really have no way to know how to actually embody that in relation to another, that like healthy, interconnected, working it out and the right place for these different parts. I remember at the beginning of healing my inner masculine, I actually came to a place of like, I actually have no idea what a healthy masculine is, like what is the divine masculine, and having these templates of like God from the church, like realizing how much like Jesus or God from the church had become the template of the masculine, and then just like the unhealthy trauma patterns in my lineage, and then just the modeling in my environment. So here I had this feeling like, oh, I'm not being met in the way I want to. But really, when I went really in there, like I don't actually even know what that would be or what that would feel like,
Yeah.
And that was really huge to come to that place of like, if I don't even know what that is, then how would I know how to honor it? How would I know how to embody it in myself? How would I know how to even recognize it in another?
Oh my God, totally. And it's interesting. I just how often or like how frequently you were using the word becoming,
Ah,
because Richard Rudd, the guy who channeled the Gene Keys, for those of you who know, he really describes and oversimplifies, masculine energy is becoming and
mm,
the feminine energy is being.
uh-huh,
And so it's interesting how much you were expressing the becoming.
uh-huh,
Like,
uh-huh.
who do I need to become?
Yes.
Like, what are the steps that I need to take to become, that masculine, like embodying that masculine health within yourself to support the feminine within you to be able to attract and even know what you're looking for on the outside partnership. So
Yeah.
what I'm really curious on of so while you were in this repair process with your inner masculine,
Mm-hmm.
how did you? So there's this questioning of like, God, I don't even,
Mm.
there's this templating from the church. Like, what were some of the steps or like, what did that look like? Who were some of the people? What were some of the resources that supported you to start to reconcile this relationship with your inner masculine?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things was somatic therapy, like getting somatic therapy, working on my nervous system, understanding the way that, understanding, but also feeling and working with the way that my nervous system reacted to the masculine, because I had a lot of trauma in relation to the masculine and authority, abuse, these kinds of things. And so I had a really strong, Mm. reaction, like defense, protectiveness in relation to the masculine. A lot of, I went really far into my feminine and really was suspicious of the masculine. So in somatic therapy, it was a lot of unwinding that in my nervous system. First of all, to work with that overreaction, in my nervous system to help calm that. And then secondly, to work with being able to recognize health in the masculine, like,
Mm,
and slowing down enough to actually practice in my nervous system, being able to notice the health. And this is, I think, a really big one for the feminine in the collective right now, because this exists generationally in our cells, right? Like in women and in the collective field, so in our DNA and in the collective field, there's so much hurt that has happened to the feminine from the masculine that now this is literally wired in us. So we can be having healthier experiences of the masculine, but we actually can't register it. We actually don't notice it. Or what happens is the second we're in some sort of health, then all the rage, all those old patterns just come flooding out. And if we don't have the capacity to notice that, we don't have the capacity to know how to work with that in our nervous system, what's going to happen is we're going to react in a way with the masculine that we project all of that hurt onto the masculine of now,
mm,
and and that we will be completely unable to perceive or feel the contours of the full person in front of us now. And in
mm,
this way, I did this a lot at the beginning, this like angry feminist, like rah, that is valid, like has a place, but it's so important that we learn how to orient between, this is me feeling what's been, but what's here now. And then this combo, right, of digesting and unwinding the trauma that actually happened, that's actually there, the anger that needs to be felt, while simultaneously noticing the health that's here and moving towards the health that's here. And like my nervous system did not know how to do that. It just was in a move away and a rage, really. And so for me, those were two pieces. It's like unwinding the ancestral, getting somatic support in that, and then simultaneously repatterning in my nervous system. And so this was where there's two things. One was learning how to differentiate and notice healthy masculine and moving towards that. So like when, moving towards that, being around healthy masculine, noticing what happens in my nervous system, practicing what are the qualities they're embodying that are healthy? What are the things, and getting to know my nervous system in relationship to that in a not romantic relationship, just in friendship. And then also calling in some of these like templates, like, the healthy version of Jesus was one for me. Although at first I was super angry at Jesus. And I had to work with that.
Mm.
Lots of anger at Jesus. But like even just I remember there's a chant, a Sanskrit chant called Sopuruk, which is like this really long chant to the divine masculine. And I would listen to the Sanskrit version and the English version. And it was like an attunement to the most divine qualities of the masculine. And so I also spent a lot of time with that, not thinking that there would be a man that shows up who's that, but for me to even attune to what are the highest vibrational qualities to learn about that, so that that could be like a guidepost or a or something I can lean into of like, oh, this is actually the beauty of the fullest highest expression of the masculine. And I remember that night because there was a thunderstorm and lightning, and I was listening to it and the power went out, and I was so in awe of like, whoa, the masculine is so beautiful.
Mm.
But I had never really felt it in that way of like, and one of the qualities I remember really landing in my body was patience and presence.
Mm.
Patience, like unconditional patience and presence.
Mm. I'm curious. So before you did this reconciliation with your inner masculine,
Hmm.
what were some of the perspectives or the projections that you had on the masculine in the
Oh yeah.
outside world? What were some of the stories that you held in
Oh
that
yeah.
version of Courtney?
And these reared their head when Mike and I started to come into relationship because he was so embodying the masculine that they came up and really big. And but I was aware like, oh, these are my projections. One was if the more masculine someone was, the more I assumed that they were would be disrespectful, that they would misuse their power, that they would not have care for how they impacted the other people or the feminine, that they would be really ignorant of their position of power and misuse their power. I had a really big projection that anyone that was embodying the masculine qualities, automatically it meant that they wouldn't be as emotionally attuned, they wouldn't be emotionally present, and um, and just kind of like that, they'll just plow over the feminine, like they won't listen to the feminine, they won't really hear her, they won't really respect her. Um, and an interesting thing in my patterning was it was almost like the more power a masculine had, the more suspicious I was of them, and the more that yeah, I guess it was like a that I felt disrespect. Like I
Mm.
felt a disrespect for them.
Hmm.
Yeah, like a disgust, I think would be the
Mm.
word, a disgust.
Mm.
Now, these weren't necessarily overt qualities. So most people wouldn't be like, oh man, Courtney, whenever she's around men. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, but they were there and they would come out the closer that I was with a masculine,
Yeah.
and sort of like in the background, affecting how I'm listening, how I'm taking them in, how I'm perceiving them, and I think this is a common one for women in our society right now is these things are in the background, these generational pieces, and then they become this like filter that filters what's happening, and then we're not able to feel fully how the masculine is really showing up. And this was what was really funny for me when I called in, when I ended up meeting Mike, was he had to cut through those. But the thing is like I had to be at a place where I was ready for that. Because if I had met Mike any earlier in my journey, I would have just really perceived him as causing harm, or like thinking he was all that.
which there were definitely moments. And something that I really appreciated about Courtney, you know, in the beginning of our relationship was I could feel how much she was reconciling that relationship within herself in
Right.
relationship to the masculine, which created, from my lens, this capacity to have that move through and
Uh-huh.
express it, but then be like, yeah, where I'm projecting, like I'm projecting onto you.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not, and I'm still checking that out,
Yeah. Yeah.
but just being real about that, like while you were in your process, like what I really, yeah, it was really refreshing of like, I could be projecting here.
Yeah.
I'm still suspicious, but I'm going to check this out. This could be me projecting my dad onto you. And then what I noticed is with that curiosity from my lens, it brought in new information. And then your capacity to then reflect back, oh, wait, that story actually isn't true inside of me.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually are safe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you are,
Mm-hmm.
reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you are emotionally attuning. And I remember you expressing a lot of like, oh, you know, in my head, I thought for sure like
Mm-hmm.
this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, oh, you completely gave me information that blew that story apart.
Yeah.
And I found that very refreshing to have that self responsibility for you to name like what's coming up in you could be material and not
Yeah.
what's actually true. I
Yeah.
found that was a really beautiful dynamic to be in, which allowed more of
Yeah.
those masculine qualities to come
Mm-hmm.
from me of like, okay, yes, I will check that out because there were definitely moments too where it was like those feelings and emotions were true.
Yeah.
Like where it was like feeling a shadow or a blind spot and
Mm-hmm.
calling
Mm-hmm.
it out. And there was appropriate times of being like, yeah, God, thank God there's a feminine who can call me out
Right.
with love, but not just project that it's all true
Yeah.
so that we could both discern, well, what in this is true? And
Yeah.
then what is just old story being projected that's not helpful for me to like be the new thing.
Yeah. Well, and this is making me think too about this is why like cultivating that inner masculine is so important because if you meet a masculine and oh my, like the, and we hear this from women like whoa, and then I was being met more than I'd ever been met, and like
Mm.
wow, I was just what can happen is we can then we'll let go of all of our boundaries and all of our, it's like, oh, you're going to be the one that like teaches me about the healthy masculine. But of course Mike is a person and he has blind spots, he has patterns, he has so
A couple.
so for me, what helped me show up in a more stable, loving way for Mike and for
Mm.
the relationship is in the moments where Mike is triggered, when there is a blind spot, when he's not able to tune to me, or he is saying something that's like not actually considerate, then I have that inner masculine in me to lean into. And I do this very consciously all the time is like, oh, here's a moment where Mike's not able to be that for me. And then I go inside and I have this healthy masculine template inside of me that I lean into. And then that healthy template in me, that healthy masculine in me, he's able to say, oh, like he's able to be the presence and the patience and the love and the stability for me so that I can hold better space for Mike in that, so that I can be clear in what I need. And so that I'm not feeling like I need him to be that for me to be okay and be whole.
Mm.
But it's interesting because this is where the healing is such a dance, right? Because um, for me, my healing with the masculine was this progression of the more I healed in myself, the more healthy men came into my life. And like now, if you look at the men in my life, like, whoa, I have really healthy men in my life.
Mm.
Like I am so blessed. I have so many conscious men in my life. And like I'm still like, wow. And when I go out into the regular world, I'm almost like I go into a bit of a shock at like maybe the status quo of where the masculine's at. I'm like, oh, right, 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 right. But I'm sharing this because as I healed, then the healthy masculine came into my field.
Yeah.
Then I would notice them. I would learn from them. I'd take that into my nervous system. And then that would inform what my inner healthy template is now, right? Like now that my inner, oh, let that land in my body, let myself learn about that. And then now I can call in even more healthy masculine. And now all of a sudden I have more capacity to, and it was this dance, right? Back and forth of like being around it, letting that come in, me working with that inside of myself, and then this back and forth. And so this is how we grow. Really, what how I perceive this is it's not where the healthy masculine are not doing their work, and it's also not, oh man, the feminine are just blaming the masculine. It's actually we have to do it together. So in that dance, like me experiencing the conscious men is it's a co-creation between me and the men, right? It's like me doing the healing work in me, and then me being able to see the health in them doing the work in them, being able to see the health in me. And it's this, right? And I've had healthy masculine say to me, including Mike, but also friends, whoa, like meeting you was really helpful for me because that was the first time I was meeting a feminine that could see me in that way or could reflect that to me in that way and like call me forward. And it's like, right, this is how it's a co-creation. And we actually need each other to do that. But the thing is the second, and I know this place, the second we go into the pattern of, well, I'm doing it and you're not, we know that we're in a trauma response. That's a form of grandiosity. And I've had that pattern for sure. It's like, I'm the one doing it. I'm the one. But like the thing is, if you're experiencing something, then you are still in the pattern. If it's still in your life,
Yeah,
you're still in the pattern.
it's important.
Yeah, it's the same thing as, running into somebody and they'll be like, everyone drinks. It doesn't matter where I go, everyone drinks. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because no one in my world drinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
We live in the same valley.
Yeah.
But it's because if we have that imprinting still in our field,
That's right.
that's what we're going to be experiencing. So anytime we're going into a place of, oh man, the world is, it's like, oh, right, this is still in my field. I'm still working on this one.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we have to, it's our fault or we have to be mean, but it's just like, I'm still working on this. This is
Yeah.
still a work in progress. And for me, I still kept attracting the shadow layer as I was attracting more health. I also was attracting abuse, you know, men that would mistreat me, or, a common one for me, I had a lot of issues with um, men overstepping and like sexual harassment kinds of experiences. I had such a thing in my field that I would attract that. And it was just this ongoing practice of like, oh, here's that pattern again. And not, oh man, the masculine and where he's at. But it's like, oh, this is still alive in my field. What do I need to do to heal that? What's happening in my field, that I need to
Totally.
heal? Yeah.
Yeah, this this is kind of a funny thing to bring in, but
Yeah.
it's one that comes up for a lot of women. So I just want to speak to it is just around this imprinting.
Yeah.
Because something that I hear a lot when women start to put themselves out into social media, there's a lot of women who get dick pics.
Oh,
And what's interesting is I'm curious, do you in your social media, do you get
never.
sent
That
dick
has
pics?
never happened.
This is why it's really this. I know this is a weird thing to bring in, but it's important because I think that really highlights the imprinting.
Yeah.
Because I'd say the work that you've done
Hmm.
cleared that from your field. So it's not something that you
Yeah.
attract when you go and put yourself out there. There's like such a field of self-respect
That's right.
that that's not going to
And
happen.
and having repaired my biosphere, like my boundaries.
Yeah.
Like I've repaired it enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And I say that because no woman is doing anything wrong.
No.
What Courtney's sharing here, that's just, this is the work that we do that really is just, this is really the essence of it. When the imprinting resolves, the thing that's happening in the outside reality won't show up anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Like when I look back at my early 20s, like I used to be a smoker, and everywhere I went, I saw people who were smoking. And I understand there are less smokers now. And what's interesting is in my perception, in the reality I've created for myself, I don't notice anyone smoking ever.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
maybe like if I think about it, like two people in the last year, which is crazy. I'm out in the world, but it's not even I don't see it. I don't notice it. It's not something that I
Hmm.
have to like I have a struggle with anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to touch this because I feel like there's a lot of women, and I'm in this mentorship program now, and there's women processing like, oh, I'm putting myself out there. I've got this ad out, but I just get a bunch of my inbox is full of dick pics. And it's like, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
and I want to
And it's
name
not
this.
okay.
It's not
It's
okay.
not
It's
okay.
completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
And the curiosity could come of like, what's in my imprinting that
Mm-hmm.
this is happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what haven't I resolved that's, maybe from childhood or something? We don't have to go right into that, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
highlight that
Yeah.
because there's a lot of women having experiences attracting certain qualities from men
Yeah.
that are is a big possibility is from the imprinting.
Yeah.
And so I want to circle back here because you said something really interesting, just touching this whole piece of where, we really need to be learning this journey together
Mm-hmm.
and going on that deeper level. I know, often this conversation between the dance between the masculine and the feminine, how it plays out in us is, you know, more of my natural state is alpha,
Mm-hmm.
like masculine, but
Mm-hmm.
gender man.
Which is what was triggering for me.
Yeah, totally. And then for you, like generally more feminine,
Mm-hmm.
have really healthy qualities of masculine, but like, and in a, so feminine, mostly in that feminine dynamic as a female.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really interesting is when Courtney and I, for like from the beginning till now, but in the beginning specifically was because Courtney was doing so much work on her inner masculine, that's not gender specific, it's the energy of
Mm-hmm.
masculinity, it's the becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually learned so much about
Mm-hmm.
how to embody my
Right.
masculine
That's right.
by how much she had to over masculinize by how not met she was in her
Right.
life,
That's right.
is how I perceive it.
Yeah.
And so when I met her, it's like she had a really successful business. She was like doing retreats, and these are all things I was wanting to become. I was wanting to create and bring those qualities forward in me more and more. I did have a business and I was doing
Mm-hmm.
really well in lots of ways. And I got mirrored qualities within my shutdown masculine, the weak masculine who
Mm-hmm.
hadn't, figured out certain pieces. And what was really beautiful is what I noticed in the relationship is you having done that work, it almost invoked and taught my nervous system what that would feel like,
Mm-hmm.
that latent potential inside of my
Mm-hmm.
masculinity. Because my upbringing too is like shut down masculine,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic, and so much love for my dad. And, you know, I didn't get modeled what it would be like for a man to have a mission and a purpose in the world and like constantly improving
Mm-hmm.
and becoming more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where we get to learn this together. And this is the whole thing. It's like you named it. It's not like, oh, the masculine aren't showing up
Yes.
as
Yes.
men.
Yes.
Like that's two topics there.
Yeah.
It's like this isn't a battle against men and women.
Mm-hmm. No, no.
This is understanding this inner conflict lives inside of
Yes.
each and every one of us.
Yes.
And the more we can appreciate the qualities and the learning of these essences within each other, it's like that's where the healing happens. This is where we get to attract
Mm-hmm.
different qualities because now I have reverence for the masculine in you
Mm-hmm.
and get to bring more of my masculine to you so
Right.
you can drop more into the being
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as more of your nature, like
Well,
both.
and this is where what was so key with that, right? Because this is the difference is lots of women are in the masculine,
Yeah,
but if there's a difference between the adaptive child masculine, so what this is like I have to do this and I'm pissed about it, but I have to be the masculine because nobody else will.
mm,
Because then you're just going to be angry at the masculine. That's very different from having an integrated inner masculine. Like those are very different things.
totally.
One is like a coping strategy, and the other is like an integrated, healthy wholeness. That then I wasn't looking for Mike to be that. I was just being that. And then that way, then I wasn't mad at him. And in the past, I would have been mad. And then that would have prevented you from really getting the download of what it was I was embodying
Totally.
because I'm just pissed,
Yeah.
right? Whereas this is, I come into my wholeness and I'm going to be this. And again, it's like I'm going to be this. And I remember this was the whole way I held this, the whole way is this is what I'm going to be. This is what I'm calling in. And I'm going to keep cultivating that. And whoever it ends up being in front of me that matches that, that's who I'm going to devote to, you know,
Mm.
and almost letting go of trying to make whoever is there that, you
Mhm.
know, and in that way, and I remember Gay Hendricks talking about this, like, I'm not going to settle. And this is really important because you know, and I've had sisters reflect this back to me who watched me in this journey is I did have previous relationships that met me in so many ways. And I remember those moments of like if I heal more in myself, it's very likely that then I will evolve out of this relationship. But like not knowing, right?
Mhm.
And there's a place where we can stay in the pattern of blaming or of making, because that actually brings a false sense of connection because, oh, we're connecting in our unhealthy patterns. You know, I'm connecting with my sisters about the masculine in an unhealthy way, you know, or this is how I'm used to relating with the masculine. So we actually feed the unhealth unconsciously because that's where we connect. And it takes a lot of courage to decide I'm going to come inward, I'm going to do the work to embody a healthier template, because then it might mean losing maybe the masculine that's in front of you. Maybe it means that now you don't connect with your friends in that way anymore.
Yeah.
But there's a deeper, deeper trust in I'm going to embody this health. And then, you know, inevitably life will send you more health. That always happens. But there's that place of trust, there's that
Mhm.
place of building it inside first and committing. You know, when I heard Gay Hendricks say that, like, I'm not going to settle. So if it means I'm not in relationship, I'm not in relationship. And I really made that commitment to myself. Like,
Yeah.
um, I am going to be this person. This is the way I'm going to relate. This is the kind of relationship I'm showing up for. And I didn't then go break up with my partner at the time. I just did the work and I embodied it. And then I just watched. So what organizes in the world around me? And that level of trust and self-commitment is actually what's needed to be the queen, to
Mm.
be the partner to the king. Because I have to always have that ability to come wholly inside of myself and keep surrendering to show up in this partnership, to not be grabbing onto you,
Mhm.
right? So it requires that level of surrender over and over and over again. And without that, I would not be able to be in this partnership. And you know, it's so funny that that process of surrender is what I do when we're in sticky places in our relationship of learning, is that I go into that. It's like, okay, come back to yourself. Who are you that's not about any of this? Who are you being?
Yeah.
What are you embodying? What do you need to do that's not about any of what's happening outside of you? And then inevitably, it's my ability to do that, that again and again and again, I get to witness, oh, that's actually what helps something shift in our relationship. That's actually what allows an alchemy to happen or the next evolution. And I know in my old self, when I didn't know how to do that, when I would grab on or try to change the other person or fix it on the outside, it would just get stuck and it would feed the toxicity and it just could not go through the process of evolution that a divine relationship needs to go through.
Yeah. When you're talking about that evolution piece, when you started to do that inner work and your outside relationships, maybe some of them
Hmm.
still reflected those old qualities that you were no longer
Hmm.
wanting to
Hmm.
relate with, was it difficult for you to let go of some of those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. I mean, in my first iteration of that, I just let go. I let go of the relationship. There's two ways that this was
Yeah.
hard. The first version in my first marriage, it was hard. It was hard to let go and trust something else was going to come in.
Yeah.
And then, but then in the second iteration, what was actually harder was that the relationships didn't leave.
Mm.
They stayed, and then I had to be in the like of the growth, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and that in some ways that was harder because it was good, but it was harder because those relationships ended up evolving with me, but I had to be in that sticky in between
Yeah.
where you're embodying the new thing and everyone's like, what is this? What are you doing? Like, and stuff comes up around that. And so I would say in both instances, the work is building your own inner tone to trust your process, no matter what's happening around you.
Yeah.
And like, fuck that. To be in a divine relationship, you have to have that skill. If
Yeah.
you don't have that skill, you can't do it. You won't be able to do it. You have to be able to surrender and let it all go and be in yourself, and then that's what allows the movement, right? And
Yeah.
I and for me, it was like this coming deeper and deeper into self relationship while moving towards healthier and healthier relationships outside of myself, And I also had some really beautiful coaches that supported me in this. And a really fascinating layer that I think is so interesting is a huge part of my healing with the masculine and moving into this partnership was actually healing my relationship with money. And I was healing my relationship with money, and then I was like, wait, I'm actually healing my relationship with the masculine, and then realizing, right, like these are so interconnected, at least in my nervous system, but I think they are, and because it's like being provided for, it's like the what moves the becoming. Like money is like
Yeah.
the fuel, the energy for the becoming. And so I had gotten so good at the being and just being with whatever's here, and in that learning how to be in that more yang becoming energy and the like moving the money through, then I had to look at all the ways that I didn't feel worthy and all the ways that the masculine doesn't love me and won't provide for me and that money won't be there. I'm still working with that one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I feel like that's a really my imagining too, and I'm curious to hear if this feels true. But then there being like the anger or the resentment towards, from the actual men not providing what you were wanting to become.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand that part because my patterning was always so much that I'm trying to get away from the masculine that I wasn't oriented to that part. Like the part that's like, I want this from you,
Mm.
because I was so in the like, get away from me.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning that that's been there, but that I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we, as you women out there, you'll have different kinds of patterning, but this version of patterning I'm talking about is you're like the empowered feminine who doesn't need the masculine, or your life is totally full without him. And but then there's this unconscious like pushing away and not valuing what he brings.
Mm. Totally.
Yeah.
So now let's, go into this place where you along your journey, you start to become aware that there's this relationship with your inner masculine that needs to heal. You do that work.
Yeah.
Your outside relationships change.
Yeah.
Then you have these other relationships where they're kind of hanging around. You're still working stuff out, but
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and then you move through all that discomfort to allow life to come towards what it is that you're wanting.
Yeah.
What's the next phase? So, like, what was involved with you like how did you gain the clarity of what qualities or like yeah, what qualities you wanted from a divine partner?
Yeah.
Like what's a divine partner to you? And how clear were you? Like how much of this was like consciously choosing, like I want this, this, and
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And then what was your process of actually attracting that?
Yeah.
Like, did you go out and get it? Did you just like put out your order to God and like it showed up? Like, what's your process in the part that leads to actually attaining
Yeah.
the partnership that you worked so hard
Hmm.
to have?
Yeah.
How,
So once I went through that whole like the deep inner work, then now I was able to orient differently to the world. And then the next step, and I guess it was in that inner work, was two layers. One was just learning about what is the healthy masculine, like what would the healthy template be? And also starting to get curious, like, what are the ingredients that I, Courtney, need for the life I want to live? So that was a really key part because I knew I wanted to be a mom. I could feel that. I knew I wanted to create a lot. I knew I wanted to travel. I knew I wanted to have a homestead. Like, I knew now that, and it's like, well, what are the ingredients or the qualities that this other person would need to have for that to work, for us to do that together? Like, not
Yeah.
just, oh, I have those values too, but like, what qualities would they need to have that would
Yeah.
actually create a, and then I was watching other conscious couples and watching what were the ingredients that were present in the ones that were really flourishing
Mm-hmm.
and learning from that too.
Mm-hmm.
That was really key for me. I find that really helpful to attune to that and notice it, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I see. Because it's a very different template from what I thought. And one of the trickiest parts for me was realizing that what I was patterned, like what my patterning, adaptive patterning, what I was drawn to in a partner wasn't actually what I needed. So where my nervous system would go, that person, oh, that actually isn't the person that I needed to be moving towards. And it was interesting because discovering that was both doing the somatic work, right? And I do a lot of shamanic journeying and things like this too, and doing energy work, and working with coaches and learning about myself. So it was like simultaneously, understanding who I needed to be calling in. I lost the train of thought. My brain just went numb. And I'm snapping. The snapping might help. Can you orient me?
Yeah, so you were talking about your process of doing the somatic work, you're doing shamanic journeying as you're moving towards the clarity of
Oh yeah.
the
So
qualities to
under
help you create the life that, like,
yeah.
what qualities would be needed for you to.
So it was like understanding what is the patterning in my nervous system of what I think love is or what I'm drawn to. Like understanding, oh, this is the automatic patterning in my nervous system of what I'm drawn to. And then getting clear what it is I need and working with noticing those kinds of qualities in the environment. And then also there was just the mystical. It was actually energetically asking for guidance, energetically talking with my soul, energetically for several years before I called Mike in. I was getting all these like droplets of information from the spirit realm about who this next partner would be. And I needed a few years because what it was showing me was so outside of what I thought I would need. Like I was drawn to like the yogi who like, lived in the forest, like this sort of like maybe more feminine qualities. And all of a sudden I was being shown like a man in the gym and he's like really big and he's like working out, and he's like these, and I was like, oh. And like for me, gym culture was like so not at all in my world, right? And so like, ugh. And so there were these just qualities that when I look back, it was like all these little droplets of information that were preparing me for you, and showing me a map, even saying like a lion, this lion template was coming in, like it's someone who's embodying qualities of a lion, and I was like, whoa! And normally I would never move towards that because I had so much aversion to an alpha kind of energy, right? And so it was like calibrating to that, and I remember this powerful moment. Okay, I'm in bed. I'm in this kind of in between state, but I'm awake, but I'm in a meditative state. And you know what happened? This is so crazy. The North Star, I don't even like the North Star came into my bedroom. Like a star came into my bedroom. It came in front of my face. I had my eyes open and it was like, I'm the North Star. Um, I want you to show me what it is you're wanting to create, and I'll shine that frequency down to bring the person that you're needing to you.
Whoa.
And, the next morning when I was integrating this, I'm like, right, like the story of Jesus is literally like the star. The wise men and the shepherds followed the star. It sent the light out to call. And so, anyways, that was such an amazing, amazing experience. And during that time, I was just cultivating the energy, the vision of what I was connecting with the soul of my child, connecting with the vision. And I was living in a cabin on the side of a mountain in the middle of COVID, um, you know, like not meeting new people.
Mhm.
And I remember laying in my hammock and just like asking the force, like, but wait, like, how am I going to meet this person? Like, I could feel this child wanted to be birthed soon, and it was all right there. I could feel it all right there, but it didn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
And the forest was just like, he's just gonna come. You don't need to go find him. He's just hang out. He's gonna be here. And so I just really trusted and I just kept leaning into that. And I really set the intention. I remember saying, I also did some different ceremonies to like mark the energy and say what I was calling in,
Mm,
some different rituals to cultivate the energy. And I remember saying to spirit, okay, well, when he shows up, you need to make him walk right up to me because I will not recognize him,
mm,
because it's different, templating. And that was what was so cool when I met you is you just walked right up to me and you were just so clear. And so it all played out exactly. And so what I learned in that process was I was intentionally co-creating with spirit and life. And
mhm,
how I understand this is you were in my field probably for 5 years before, and you were an energy, a resonant energy in the field, right? Even though we
mm,
didn't live close to each other, but how I
yeah,
understand this, you were resonant energy in the field, and the more work that I did and the more work that you did, the more we came into that resonance more and more and more. And then life wants to bring those energies together.
mhm,
But if either of us chose not to do our inner work, if I chose not to leave my last relationship, if I chose not to honor that resonance in myself, we wouldn't have been brought together,
yeah,
or we would have been, but we wouldn't have been able to recognize each other, to do the things that would be needed in order to really embody the highest vibration of what that is.
totally.
Yeah.
And now I'm curious, thanks for explaining that. I'm curious to hear. So, for all the women that are out there and they're still in that process where they're either in a relationship and it's just like clunky and it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like the paths are aligning. And then the women who are out there, holding the fort, they're single,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of clear on what they want, but they're still maybe a little frustrated and annoyed by, this
Mm-hmm.
this phrase of there aren't any men out there.
Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
not showing up. Like what would you say to them as like some guidance or some wisdom of like
Yeah.
how to attract that divine masculine that they can feel in there, like they can
Mm-hmm.
feel that potential in the field, but it's just not showing up? What would you share with them?
Yeah, I mean, for the woman who's in a relationship and she feels the potential of what she could be in, and it's clunky what she's in, and she's not sure that this is the person, I would say keep trusting that inner longing, keep coming back to that and becoming the person who would live that and embodying that. And don't minimize that longing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't shut it down. Don't be like, oh, well, then I'm not being grateful. Oh, then I'm not like, no, no to all of that. Like, trust that inner longing, trust that inner knowing, and keep moving towards what it is that takes you there. And I want to give you full permission, like, full permission to trust that. Like, you deserve that. You can live that. You can create that. You don't have to compromise or shut yourself down. So show up for it, feed it, nurture it, water it, become that person, and then move towards what in life brings that to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowed. You can do it. And I know I could have chosen a different way and I would not be living the life I am. And it took a lot of courage to choose to trust that higher vision instead of settling for what was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And really, just lastly, this is spirit speaking to you, not to go out and make someone else be that, but it's spirit calling you into your next evolution. And
Yeah.
so show up for it.
Oof.
And then for the feminine who is single and she can feel it, but she can't find the healthy masculine. First of all, get really clear in yourself what would the healthy masculine feel like in your body? What would he look like? How would he move? What kinds of things would he say? How would you recognize him? And really work with that. Really work with that. Not in a like perfect way, but like in a real way. Like if he was triggered, what would he do? If he was mad at you, how would he be? And just really letting yourself feel that really deeply, to build that into your nervous system. And the second thing I would say is to start speaking to him energetically in the field. So start communing with him energetically. You know, Mike talks about feeling me for months before we actually met.
Mhm.
And I really feel like our souls were actually communing and speaking to one another back and forth, back and forth. So, like, intentionally start to speak with him.
Mhm.
And you know, and I also did this with calling in our son too, is like, and ask his energy, like, what do I need to do to meet you? Like, who, you know, let that be a guidepost for you.
Mhm.
And the other thing is let yourself simultaneously cultivate more wholeness in yourself while being open to the fact that you can't do it all yourself, and that
Mhm.
life can be a lot better if you let someone else come in and hold it with you.
Oof.
And that requires vulnerability to actually acknowledge to ourselves that life would be better if someone held it with us, that there's ways we can't meet ourselves,
Mhm.
that someone else has ingredients that we don't have. And the more that you can cultivate the both, I am whole and I actually need partnership to come into more wholeness. When we can hold both of those at the same time, then we can actually be open to that divine masculine.
Oof. Yeah. Mic drop.
Mm.
Oh God, I could keep going on and
Yeah.
on. Just that time there. God, thank you, Courtney. Thanks for coming on to the show. I
Mhm.
loved this. I love just in my own experience learning the journey of the feminine from the feminine. Like
Right.
just how much that informs the feminine in me. And just also just this for me is such like there's a hunger out there for this information, for this wisdom, for this guidance because we can touch these places of like, oh, what is happening in these sticky places between men and women
Hmm. Hmm.
with this masculine feminine energy. And I feel like, bringing the gift that I see that you bring, which is illuminating for the feminine, like how do you actually become that? How do you
Hmm.
become the feminine to attract that longing?
Hmm.
How do you actually materialize that
Hmm.
desire?
Hmm.
And so thanks for bringing your process of actually embodying it and doing it and living it and taking responsibility for what's needed to
Hmm.
have that reality that you've been longing. And
Hmm.
oh, what a gift.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for it feels really sweet to be a part of your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to speak to, yeah, your mm, what you've helped co-create.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you all for tuning in and listening. I'd love to hear how this lands for you. So you can, find me on social media, shoot me a DM, and please remember to give this a 5-star rating so it can bump this up in the platform, get this message out to other men and women and transgender and all the people where there would be benefit from this.
Hmm.
Thank you all and have a beautiful day.
Hmm. Thank you, Mike.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Beautiful.